Hello and good evening and welcome to this is our second Messiah rehearsal already. So welcome back. Great pleasure to be here again and working with you. We're going to start tonight with his Yoke is Easy and hopefully get through to He Trusted in God. But, you know, we'll see how many words of wisdom come from behind me tonight. So we might not get that far. We've got no sort of agenda here, so we'll get as far as we can, or want to. But before we do, I'm just going to address a few things that have come in as feedback and comments. If you do have feedback, there's good reason to join our Facebook group. There's a link to that below. Please join that, and then when questions come up as you're practicing, let us know, and we can respond to them in future workshops. One of the things that a few people have mentioned is the speed at which we're going through things. Well, for the number of people who say, oh, it's going very fast, we have other people who say, oh, I love the speed that you're going at. So it's really difficult to know how to balance the speed. But you can always watch these videos again. I'm not sure if you're aware that, yes, they are live now, but they will remain on YouTube so that you can go back and watch them again. And of course, please sign up for Core. If you go to core.app, top right-hand corner, you'll see the login and sign up there. And you can then practice along with the rehearsal tracks that are in Core. It's the reason it exists. So that's the first thing to mention. Core at the moment is only available in browsers. On any device, it is an app, but some people have said, well, I can't find it in the App Store. That's because we haven't got it in the App Store yet. We're working on that, but at the moment, on a computer, a laptop, a tablet or a phone, you will be able to access it via a browser. So just to clear up any confusion there. And somebody else asked a great question. If you're not using the Novello score, which is numbered, they're saying, well, does Simon, when he's numbering the score, does he start at the beginning of the piece and number all the way through it? Or does he number at the beginning of each movement? And I number scores at the beginning of each movement. Otherwise, I'd be totally lost. So if you are having to write numbers in, the numbers I'm referring to start at 1 at the beginning of each movement. Okay? And the last thing to mention is that for those of you who are in London and would like to go and see a live concert this Christmas, the Core singers and players, we will be performing the Christmas portion of Messiah, which is scenes 1 to 5, plus the Hallelujah chorus, at St. John's Smith Square on Friday, December the 11th. So please, if you'd like to come and hear us performing it with 16 voices and orchestra at St. John's, tickets are on sale through the St. John's Smith Square box office. There's details for that below. And if you can't come to that performance, we will be live streaming the performance. And we'll be sending out, or we'll be putting information out about that very shortly. And I guess that's the last thing I should mention at this point, is if you haven't signed up for our mailing list, please do, so that we can keep you informed about those developments regarding live streaming the concerts, etc., etc. And you can sign up by going to core.app. If you go to any of the workshops, down at the bottom you'll see sign up for the mailing list there. And you can do that. Okay? Brilliant. Well, who's behind me tonight? Well, we've got Emma Walshe, again as soprano. We have Martha Harrigan again, McLorinan, is with us again as mezzo-soprano. Jermey Budd, tenor. Jonathan Brown, bass. And Peter Foggitt in the far distance on piano. And I'm going to ask the wonderful Martha just to lead us in a brief warm-up in preparation for looking at his Yoke is Easy. Thanks.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us again. As Simon said, we'll keep it brief tonight, but refer back to some of what I was suggesting last week. So let's just check how we're standing first. Feet hip width apart, not locking your knees or anything, give yourself a little bit of a wiggle there. Do some nice shoulder rolls, backwards, forwards, getting rid of any tension you might be holding there. In fact, bring your shoulders right up to your ears and drop them and let them swing nice and loosely by your side. Great. So with a hand on the lower abdominal muscles, in the same way as we were last week, let's feel some movement there here. So let's have so hopefully you're really feeling some engagement with those muscles, connecting your sound to your body there. Great. Let's start with some humming. Let's just have... And really slide between those two notes. So... Lovely. Let's touch on something I mentioned last week but didn't really explain. I think when we got a bit higher I spoke about dropping your jaw just to create a little bit more space for that sound to resonate. The same applies actually even when we're humming. So even when you've got your mouth shut, if everything's quite tight you get whereas if you just from this joint here by your ear just give your jaw a wiggle and create some space between the top teeth and the bottom teeth even when your lips are closed. See what a difference it makes to your sound. Give it a go. Great. Hopefully you heard a difference there. I'd like to encourage you to think about vertical mouth shapes for most of what we're singing actually. So just dropping the jaw from here is a useful thing. Let's go up a scale a bit. About some vowels. We'll start on a hum. I want you to think about where your tongue is. Try having the tip of the tongue just touching those bottom teeth for these vowels. Ah, or, oo, and then back again. Or, ah, starting on a hum. Go up a semitone. Try not to move the tongue on this one. Lovely. Let's try some different vowels. So that's ah, e, ah. Think vertical for all of these. Starting on that note, let's have some sirening. Back down to something lower. And let's finish off with either a rolled R or a lip trill. See if you can cross those two octaves and great. Been up quite high, down quite low. I told you it would be brief, but I hope you're feeling ready to sing. Great.
Excellent. Thank you, Martha. Okay, let's turn to page 86 in your books and we'll look at His Yoke is Easy. You got it? Okay, brilliant. Let's have a sing through and then we'll break it up and have a look at little pieces, okay? 3 and...
His yoke is easy, his burden is light, his burden is light. His yoke is easy, his burden is light, his burden is light, his burden is light, his light, his burden is light. His burden is light. yoke is easy.
His burden is light. His burden
His burden is light.
Yoke is easy. His burden is light. His burden
His burden is light. His yoke is easy.
is light.
His burden
His burden,
His burden
his burden, his burden is light. His burden is light. His yoke is easy.
His burden
His burden is light. Is light.
His burden is light.
His burden is light.
His burden
Is light. His burden is light. His yoke is easy. Is easy. His burden is light. His yoke is easy. His burden is light. His yoke is easy. And his burden is light.
Well, they make it easy, don't they? It's absolutely wonderful. Can we look through this, please? And let's start with, as it does in this chorus, with the sopranos, and let's give them a little guidance here on keeping it so burdenless and light.
I mean, it's ironic, I think, as it is the hardest, one of the hardest choruses in the whole piece. But I think the key is in the words. You're singing about his burden is light, so sing it lightly. That is the best way to get through this, is to not try and sing it too heavily. I think, if you stay light and bouncy on all those runs, it does make it so much easier.
And I think that's covered in the orchestration as well. It's just a bass line, isn't it? It's just a walking bass over which all... So it is intended that it should have the lovely bounce that a good continuo bass would give, and then the voice is just flipped over the top with no yokes to hold them down. Tenors are the next to enter.
Yeah.
What
Good luck with this one. I think it's E is a horrible vowel to sing on, especially up high. So I think you had a feeling, a bit like Martha said in the warm-up, a feeling of space behind it if you can, and that will definitely help you get through those runs.
Anybody to talk about going between the quavers and the dotted quavers and not allowing that to sort of affect the tension, because I think sometimes I will hear, working with amateur choirs, I'll hear that E be different after the dotted, the sort of it'll tense.
Yeah, I guess it's trying to sing it without too much of a break where the dot is. You don't want to have a huge sort of gap in the voice. You need to feel like you're going through that, and it's just a tiny sort of flick in the middle of it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, Martha.
For the altos, it immediately jumps below the stave. Whereas I said last week, there's a tendency for us to want to make sure we're heard, and you can get a bit stuck if you try and do that. Don't keep it light. A prime example is somewhere like bar 8, where actually, if you look at the scoring, we're lower than the tenors are. I'm afraid at this occasion you just have to let the tenors have their moment. It's a team game. And also, particularly at that moment, Z is not the syllable in the word easy that you want to stress anyway. So just let some of these kind of just fall down to nothing there, and just don't get stuck trying to produce more noise than is absolutely necessary at the lower stuff.
Jonathan.
From
the bass.
I'm slightly biased, I suppose, but I think being light for a bass is quite a difficult thing, I think, because we generally have weight in our voice. So this is especially difficult because it goes quite high. We haven't spoken very much about pitch, because we're doing it at A440.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times now we will be singing it at A415, which is down a semitone, which makes a lot of difference, I think, for a singer. I find the way that I have to sing this piece when I'm singing it at 440, doing the solos or the choruses, is significantly different depending on the pitch we're doing it at. So if we're doing it at 440, it is actually even harder to get that lightness in the sound. So that's one thing. I think it might therefore need a little bit more singing in a way, because it's nice to be light, but we do have to eventually sing these phrases. And it goes, of course, above the stave quite a lot for the bass in various places, and some humorous bits like in bar 23 where we start on an E flat, his yoke, and then come all the way back down, which is a bit strange. Also that yum ba dum ba da 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 dum ba dum ba da. We haven't talked about whether we're definitely doing that or not, because sometimes it's just straight through. But
if we're doing it, we'll do it with the dotting.
There you go.
Okay. I think it gives a lovely energy.
Yeah.
But yes, you're absolutely right.
yeah,
some conductors-
it's a little bit about placing the voice, I think, for the bass as well, because it does sit a little bit high, this chorus, so don't bring too much weight down at the bottom of the voice. So I guess lightness is the word of the chorus.
Okay, well, let's try all that, keeping it light. Although taking it to 415 might be nice for you, but it makes your job.
Yeah, you can
You can get lower.
I enjoy it. It's fun.
Lovely.
But, yeah.
Excellent.
do it then. Let's do it then.
No. From the top, in an A440. Okay. Fireworks, not gunshots. Here we go. 3 and...
His yoke is raised, his borne is light, his burden is borne.
His yoke is easy, his burden is light, his burden is light, his burden is light, his light,
His burden is
burden, his burden is light,
his burden is light.
Good. Before we go on any further, I just want to talk about all these... talking about the imagination that we can use with Handel to, there's lots of opportunities to do things in imaginative and different ways. And on this page, we have all these interjections. We have some sections when we're together, but then we have bits being passed over and added to as one voice joins another, or we have little bits that are thrown in. I know some of these things. I'm asking people for whom, after many, many years of study and professional experience, a lot of these things are second nature. But if you can think yes, I was referring to you.
yes, of course.
But if you could try and think about things that are second nature to you, and just think about how you're shaping things as you're going through to make, how you're bouncing ideas around, because we do. You might, in the moment, come up with something, and then you'll hear that and think, oh, that's a nice idea. I'm going to mirror that or copy that, or somebody else other than me talk about it.
There's something.
So come on.
There's something really interesting and a visual pun that is in operation through this whole movement, which is that Handel gives you the shape of a yoke. At the beginning of it, ba 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 is the shape of a yoke that you put over cattle.
Yeah.
And then when he says it's easy, he turns that upside down.
So it's like it's being thrown to the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Is the same thing, but just the other way up. And then his burthen, or burden, depending on which edition you're reading from, is this drooping thing that hangs from your shoulder. His burthen is light. But there's the joke.
Right.
That he uses the same figure to suggest lightness as he does to suggest heaviness.
Right.
And I guess that's the thing that gets passed between the parts. That you feel burden, but then you also feel light, and then light. And burthen also does that, going upwards. It's like a helium balloon of a burthen.
Floating away.
Isn't that fun?
Yes,
It's such a wonderful thing that he's sitting there in his house with 2 weeks to write Messiah, and he has this genius idea to do this pun all the way through.
And then later on, by all means, point these things out. When we get to sheep going astray, we can talk about, it does the same thing with the sheep going astray. Well, there's one thing, light and burthen. So using the words to give nice shape and colour to things. Anything else mentioned on that page? Before I forget, somebody did text in a question. What we were talking about 440 and 415. What does that mean? Well, yeah. Again, I apologise. We're using those technical terms that we all know, and of course, if you've not studied music, or you may not know these terms. So we're talking about the way in which pitch has been standardised. So if Peter plays the A just above middle C on the piano, that has been set at a pitch at 440 what's it? Hertz. I was going to say kilohertz, but no, hertz. And that's 440 hertz is the waveform and the speed of that. So if he plays the octave above that, that's half of that, or double that. Sorry, other way around. It's twice as many. And if he does the one below, it's the other way around. And when we talk about 415, that same note has been tuned slightly lower, so the hertz of 415, which is about a semitone on a piano that's been tuned to 440. So everything gets shifted down a semitone. Talking of shifting keys, I once worked with the granddaughter of Cole Porter. And Cole Porter never learnt to play in any other key than... Sorry, not Cole Porter, Irving Berlin. Irving Berlin. And Irving Berlin never learnt to play in any other key than C. And he had a remarkable piano that had a lever beneath the keys, and he could move it to change the key for different things. So he just always played in C, but he could change the key that way. Anyway, now we have electric keyboards to do that. Okay, sorry, a lot of talk there. Let's go back to the beginning of this one. And I think Peter's suggestion is a great one. Think about looking at those lines, and when the yoke gets turned upside down as it is thrown away, the burden is now light. And look at the context within burthens being light, and how you can put lightness into your voice as you're doing that, and keeping all the rhythm going again. Sing it from the top.
His yoke is easy, his burden is light, his burden is light.
His yoke is easy, his burden is light, his burden is light, his burden, his burden, his burden is light, is light.
Lovely. Oh, I love that one. Let's go on to Behold the Lamb of God. So page 91 in the Novello score. It's the next beginning of part 2. It's the next one along. So in this one, lots of big leaps to start all this on short notes. So if we could just talk a little bit about the preparation for that. And, well, Martha, you begin this one. So.
Yeah. A semiquaver on a bottom G isn't really fair. Altos, I think, is what I'm going to say. It gives you no time to get going. So be as close to being early as you can if we're going with a semiquaver. Make sure. I mean, a B is one of those consonants where you have to, your lips have to close together. Make sure that once you've dealt with the consonant, you drop and create some space for that vowel to have a chance to sound on that bottom note. The higher G is longer and a whole octave higher. And it's also the more stressed, isn't it? You say behold, not behold. So I think my advice really is don't worry too much about it. I'm not sure whether that's going to be popular advice, but...
But do you have, which note do you have more in your mind? You've got the upper G that you're thinking, and then the bottom G is sort of like a...
Yeah, I suppose
you're
so.
thinking more about the upper G. And
Yeah, I mean,
I
I
think
think
the
it's...
opposite, actually. I'm going to be controversial and say that I think the bottom note can be an
Well,
anchor.
give it a minute.
You said you wanted us to talk more. I find it's useful to think of that bottom note as an anchor more than... I mean, because I think often with high... I mean, obviously it's higher for the soprano to start than it is for the bass. But sometimes I think we get so worried about singing the high notes that we don't think about the low notes. Right. And if you can get a hold of that first note, that's very quick. It kind of grounds the voice a little bit, and then it sort of sets up.
But is that because that's a very solid note for you? And if you're dealing with a note that is sort of right at the bottom of your range?
I think I'd do that across, for me, I'd do it across the across my register, but that might
Yeah,
just be me.
I would also try to. I just think, because it's a semiquaver, it's
there's
hard.
no time, is there?
It's hard.
Yeah.
Let's try them, shall we? Unless there's any other...
No, I think
Okay.
he saw the tenors coming, so he only gave us a fifth of a lead. So.
Okay, not too slow. Lovely. So definitely, I mean, in all choruses, we need to make sure that we're listening to everybody else around us, but particularly in this one with those rhythms, we need to make sure that we're all got the same direction with the rhythm, and that some of us aren't moving towards triplets, dum, ba, dum, ba. Quite, particularly at a sort of large speed, broad speed like that, can be too easy. But also, we perhaps don't want to go towards the full double dot sometimes we've got in other movements, which takes away some of the sonority of this particular movement. Can we take... I think on this one, because it's not very long, I would, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to do altos and sopranos, please. Let's just go from bar 3, please, Peter. And... Lovely, just beautiful. And I hope you, if you didn't fully take it in this time, you can go back and listen. But what I really loved hearing behind me there was God and Lamb, obviously very different shape words in the context of them musically, but the rhythm never changed. So behold the Lamb of God. So God, there was a little bit more space between that and the 16th, but the rhythm was always equal all the way through. I think what was also nice about that is hearing how you both shaped each of the parts of those phrases around the words. So I think let's do the same thing with the tenors and basses. It's really enlightening and lovely. Thank you. Same bar. Well, no, don't need to go same bar. Let's go one bar later. Bar 4.
Behold the Lamb of God. Behold the Lamb of God that taketh away the sin of the world.
Behold the Lamb of God. Behold the Lamb.
Behold the Lamb of God that taketh away the sin of the world, the sin of the world. Behold the Lamb of God, the Lamb of God. That taketh away the sin of the world, the sin of the world. That taketh away the sin of the world, the sin of the world, that taketh away the sin of the world.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I hope that also gave you some idea of the shape and all the beautiful lines that exist within that movement. Let's go on. Surely. Number 24. We're still in the realms of the dot, but I think this one, it definitely does have less of a relaxed, more of a driving feel on this one. Anybody else want to give some pointers before we sing through this one? Okay, let's sing through this one. Very quiet.
I think I'd say do a bit of score reading.
Yeah.
I mean, in bar 7, for example, on the word... That's a bad example. Just look at where there are little clashes to paint the words and maybe treat different words differently to paint the meaning. It's a bad example. It's a better one.
What about vibrato, Simon, versus non-vibrato, which is quite a big issue in early music, I think. There was a whole program on the radio last week about vibrato and that kind of thing. And I think this one, because there's so many amazing clashes, obviously the more vibrato in the voice, the less we maybe hear that A flat against that G natural. And I just wonder if this might be one that people think about sort of possibly straightening the voice out a little bit, occasionally, just to, I mean, sing naturally, but you know, this one's a little bit more four square than some of the ones we have fugues and imitative singing. So maybe it's something to think about in this.
Yeah.
So I think part of the point there. Sorry, Emma.
I was just going to say when you get to A, sort of going along with what Johnny's saying a little bit, I think maybe the straightening out as like an effect, and combining that with keeping the drive through the phrase, because it's easy to look at and think, oh, it's gone to a slightly slower, less kind of da-da-da-da bit, and kind of relax into it too much, but you need to keep that drive going through so it doesn't slow down, it doesn't lose energy, because the words carry a lot of meaning, obviously, and you want to get that across.
And that yum, ba-dum, ba-dum is still going in the orchestra, but you're absolutely right. It's too often that is the case. And the thing about vibrato is that, of course, what you're doing with vibrato is you're actually increasing the it's like you're making the target that much bigger. And my understanding is, I don't know if it was on that radio program, but vibrato grew in the early 20th century because of these things, because of microphones. And that early microphones had a real problem picking up these really pure sounds that were still quite common into the 20th century, with the way that vibrato was used very much as a way of a sort of emotional technique. You warmed a note, but actually most of the time your tone was straight, and then you warmed, I'm doing it like a violinist, but you warmed a certain note with vibrato. But it made it much easier to pick up the sound in early recording systems, that actually they started to play with this constant vibrato that we came to think of with violinists like Jascha Heifetz, and this very sort of, every note has a constant vibrato on it, which is very much, as I understood it, something that came out of the recording industry.
Okay.
Peter's frowning. It's like he's heard something.
I haven't heard that before.
Okay.
Come to my talking point.
Yeah.
There are some really interesting things written about vibrato around the time of Messiah. Mozart's dad, Leopold, has some opinions about vibrato and where it's used and where it's not used. But he also differentiates between vibrato and a kind of fluttering of the voice, which is one of the things that we often find in Bach, where, for instance, he'll write a really long, squiggly line about something, and there's a question about what that means, because if you try to trill on that, you just end up dying. So there are all sorts of questions about vibrato at the time, and it might not be quite as open and shut as we think, although I'm really interested about this question of how microphones interact with vibrato. I suspect it's also got something to do with the development of the heavier voice. That if you're Wagner and you have an orchestra that is 8 times the size of Bach's, your singers have got to do something physiologically to cope with that. You can't just have some sort of boy treble singing Brunhilde. I mean, you could, but it would be rubbish.
And going back to the point about pitch, I did Tristan and Isolde in Canada a number of years ago, and both, if you wanted to do Wagner anywhere in the world, you need to go to Germany to find your singers generally. It doesn't matter. One of my Tristan was from the United States, but being a Wagner tenor had been living in Germany for 20 odd years, and my soprano Isolde was from Sweden, but had been living in Germany for 20 odd years, because you get more opportunities to sing that repertoire there than anywhere else. And they got off the plane in Vancouver, and the first question they asked me is, "What pitch are you doing this at?" And I said, A440. And they said, "Oh, thank goodness." The German tradition now was to sing at a higher pitch than 440, even for things like Wagner, so which is already high, and now they're taking the pitch up even higher. Anyway, let's sing Surely Death Borne. thank you very much. So you might have seen that big grin I got there sort of around bar 18. It was because all the things that Jonathan was talking about, they got onto that note and they moved through that note with the crescendo, with very pure tone. And literally, the vibrations were fabulous of those harmonies coming together. So what might be nice is, could we take it, please, from just the altos and the sopranos? This is the last beat of bar 12, going into A. So it's the last bar of page 99. And what I'd like you to listen to as you sing along is how they are using the vibrato on certain notes and not on others. And it's very, very specifically aimed towards the colour of the phrase, but also the emotional context of the phrase. And I think it'd be much easier to hear if we separate out altos and sopranos and then tenors and basses. Okay, let's take it back. 2, 3. Let's do the same little bit with the basses and the tenors. So this is bar 13, letter A.
He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised.
So a great example there was when Jeremy and Jonathan arrived at wounded on the first beat of bar 13. We've got this D against a C, and there was no vibrato, exactly what Jonathan was talking about, so that clash, even though it's over an octave apart, really, there was nothing other than the fundamental of the note. We're taking out all the harmonies that might be added in by putting, harmonics rather, that could be added in by doing the vibrato. Absolutely lovely. Surely, people think it's just that Handel didn't know English very well. I don't know that that's true. And maybe that's because I live in Bristol when I'm not in London. And there's plenty of parts of the country where you might hear people saying surely. We need to remember that the accent I have and other gentlemen in the room, or people in the room here have, is a Victorian creation into the 20th century. And that the way in which we shape vowels and, the way in which we shape words today is far more different than the English that Handel would have heard around him. And it may well be that he heard lots of surelys in London at that time. As you might do in North America, where you find pronunciation. It's interesting working as I have with choirs in Canada and the United States. Their pronunciation is much closer to the 18th century of many words than ours is, because ours changed during the 19th century. Anyway, that's just me sticking up.
Do you think
Handel.
Simon in the trumpet shall sound? He also heard incorruptible. He does set that
no,
one.
I can't stand up for him every
Do you
time.
say that in Bristol? That one?
Incorruptible.
Incorruptible.
Tibble.
Yeah.
Yeah. Incorruptible. Yeah.
Incorruptible.
Yeah.
There is also precedent.
Peter? Oh, Peter's got precedent.
There is also historical precedent for pronouncing that word with 3 syllables.
Yeah.
As in surety. When you give someone a thing as an earnest of something you're going to give to them in the future.
Yeah.
There are archaic spellings of the word surely that really do suggest 3 syllables, things with a W in the middle of 2 vowels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it could well be that actually in Handel's London people did just say surely or surely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he might not have been quite as mad as we think he was.
Yes. I think it'd be long enough to pick up an ear for the language by this stage. Fabulous. Okay. Let's move on, because we'll come back and sing through all of these in the last 15 minutes, don't worry. And obviously we'll do these as intended, going attacca from one section to the next. Now the next thing, this is one of those movements that has very, very different approaches as far as tempo is concerned. And you can't even put it down to historically informed positions versus older vision. I mean, you've got a wide range within the historically performed groups as you do with the more traditional orchestras groups. Personally, I like to take it at a fair speed and not take it too slowly. But maybe we'll try it at 2 different speeds so that we can look at the different challenges that places for us on a musical basis, not just a technical basis. I mean, there's lots of places to breathe in this, and if you don't take it too slowly, I don't think it's too problematic. Let's sing it through first. It's his, can I have that F minor chord there? Bom, bom. So we'll take it back to 2, 3, and 1.
And with his stripes we are healed. 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 Stripes we are healed. And with his stripes we are healed. And with his stripes. And with his stripes we are healed. And with his stripes we are healed.
We're going to lose our sheep in a moment. Let's go back and do this again. And now let's take it quite a lot slower. And let's think of all these phrases in... Because that had a definite rhythm and larger sort of blocks of rhythmic sense to them. Let's look at each line almost as an individual line. So everything becomes a little bit sort of self-contained. Yeah? And bring the dynamic down, make it sort of a more intimate feel. I'm not looking for, I'm looking for you to explore this time, okay? Yep. At a slower tempo. And you could explore as well. That sort of speed. Okay, here's the F major minor chord. And
with his stripes we are healed. And with his stripes we are healed. And with his stripes we are healed.
His stripes we are healed. And with his stripes we are healed. And with his stripes we are healed.
Thank you very much. Totally different. I think, and you'll find both of those speeds in many, many recordings. Have any of you tales to tell of particularly unusual interpretations of this, or particularly ones that were, for good reasons, hopefully?
No, not really, but I think it does. It doesn't. The speed that's chosen does affect your job.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's pain in the interval, isn't there, with his and stripes? But at that speed in particular, I think altos. I've been saying to you, don't give too much. Don't force anything beneath the stave. I think at this point it does want something quite chesty and vulgar and painful and nasty. Actually, if you think you're talking about wounds, aren't you? It's not supposed to sound nice, and at that speed I would encourage doing more in terms of tone colour in my line for things like that.
I think there's a definite, if you take it at the slower speed, there's definite tears in this one, whereas if at the faster speed there's more a sense of indignation or at least anger, maybe, at sort of his lot, as opposed to crying at his feet. But any other thoughts on that one?
I think also because they relate very much to the movements either side as well, and one can definitely sort of lead into the next, and the tempo you set also sort of indicates how you're going to sing the next movement and that kind of thing.
If those of you who've got the Prout edition, I think that's in 2/4 in the Prout edition, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he sort of made the decision editorially for you that it was going to be at 2/4 and turning all of those into quavers instead of the minims. All we like sheep have gone astray. Okay, any words of advice other than good luck before we go into this?
Knowing where the run, where it's going, I think what Emma said last week, maybe about some of these runs, you need to figure out the sequence maybe a little bit, and then know when you're coming out of it. And this one goes around and around and around for obvious, word painting reasons. But it's useful to do it slowly, knowing where the little pattern breaks here and there.
Yeah, all about patterns. And we've got some octaves in there to prepare for, particularly the tenors and the altos. Let's sing it, and then I'm sure we'll have other things to say once we've sung it, I'm sure. 3, 2.
All we like sheep, all we like sheep
Have gone astray.
all we like sheep, all we like sheep have gone astray.
We have turned.
We have turned.
Everyone to his own way. Everyone to his own way.
All we like sheep have gone astray.
Have gone astray.
We have turned, and everyone to his own way. We have turned,
Everyone to
His own way. We have turned.
we have turned,
We have turned.
we have turned
Everyone to his own way.
everyone to his own way. All we like sheep
Have gone astray. Have gone astray.
have gone astray.
have gone astray.
We have turned,
We have turned, we have turned,
we have turned,
we have turned everyone to his own way.
we have turned,
We have turned everyone to his own way.
we have turned,
Everyone to his own way. All we like sheep. All we like sheep
have gone
have
astray.
gone astray.
Have gone astray.
have turned everyone to his own way. We have turned everyone to his own way. And the Lord hath laid on
I could hear lots of fun being had behind me here. Bit of competition going on. I think one thing that would be really good to look at is, just pick one of these runs and just demonstrate a little bit how you would break that down and practice it. I think that would be really, really helpful. Or how you suggest that our viewers practice it.
Well, Johnny last week suggested some useful things, which was practicing it runs to something else. So like a doobie-doo or a rolled R or a lip trill, so or whatever, sticking your tongue out, or anything, just to firstly, because actually that tends to be better for your breath control, because you're not focusing, you're not thinking about words, you're just thinking about breath control and breath flow, and then breaking it up into segments. So we have time, and then you could do da 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 da, or something like that. Da 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 da. So kind of finding those patterns, and it doesn't have to be the pattern that I'm saying, it could be something else, but something that helps your brain know where to go, because these are tricky runs, and they're constantly going in different directions. So even if it's kind of a little symbol that you put in your score at the point where the pattern changes, so you know to be ready for that moment.
And eat full fat yogurt. No, it's not as random a statement as you think, but what it's all about building those synaptic bridges with patterns. We talk about muscle memory in these. Often we use that as a shorthand to say, well, you've got to build up them, you've got to repeat it X amount of times, but the reality is what you're doing is you're building up synaptic memories, and what you're actually doing is you're building proteins around those synaptic connections that are built up using healthy fats. So healthy fats, not burgers, but yogurt. So my point was going to be is there is a certain element you just need to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And it will get worse before it gets better. And one of the things I think we've all experienced working with teachers is working with a student who's going, I'm working so hard on this, and it's getting worse. And you think, well, okay, well, now I put them onto something else to practice, and then that other thing will get better. But the repetition is important to build up those synaptic connections. And also, taking that pattern and changing the way in which you're looking at the pattern within the longer phrase will help the brain sort of make those connections. And good sleep helps.
Yeah, sometimes you can practice with different rhythms. So doing a dotted rhythm or a back dotted rhythm, just because it just kind of gets your brain, figuring it all out. And I think Martha said last week about using those patterns to phrase as well, which actually helps you to sing it better too. So you might sort of crescendo to certain points in the pattern, and that will help you learn it too.
Yeah, if you're not always going for the first of a set of four semiquavers, it's going to be more interesting to listen to and also more fun to sing. But I think I'm completely agreeing with what Simon is saying. I think little and often is the way to do this. Yes. You can drive yourself mad sitting there trying to learn them. So very, very, very slowly, little and often, and just know where the harmony is going. It just takes there's no shortcut, I'm afraid. It takes time.
Could I mean, really, let's demonstrate, if I could ask you each to demonstrate one of those, and really just show how slow, and each one try a different variant, like a different rhythm or a pattern or something. Just if we want to start with Emma and go down.
Okay, so I'll do a dotted rhythm to show
Yep.
you how that would go. So, we have turned, for example.
We have turned. I wouldn't sing it like that in a performance, but just have fun with it, play around. Yeah.
But by being able to praise an emphasis against what is normal, it means you know where. If you know where the natural place is, and you're deliberately going against it, you're emphasising the natural place. So that makes sense too.
So letter D, bar 41. I would just go, we have ta, and I'd do that a couple of times, ta, and then look at the similarities in the pattern. The next bit goes, and then it's repeated, and then you've got you can see there's two bits the same. So you go, I've just done that bit, and I can definitely sing that bit again because I've just done it, and that's how I would learn.
And I think
like that.
Adding on to Jeremy's point, that's a good point to also mark in. And if there are 2 repetitions, you might want to work in 1, 2, and then show where the change is, so that you're actually conscious of, how many repetitions there are. Because that's the other thing, is making sure you're clear when it changes. And Jonathan?
I would do exactly what Jeremy did,
Of course.
but I would do it down the octave because rather uncharitably, Handel gives that run the exact same run that he's given to the tenor to the bass.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that was a joke or if he just had very good basses, but that's quite hard to sing that one up there for the bass. So we have to just do it down the octave to save your voice a little bit, because if you do it 6 or 7 times up there, you won't be able to sing the rest of the piece.
Right. But you're still you're learning the pattern, you're learning the pitches, and when you're confident on that,
then put it up the octave. Yeah, save the voice a bit.
Brilliant. All great suggestions. Other things to mention we go through all the business with the sheep, and the Lord hath laid on him. All of a sudden we have to suddenly start sustaining things coming out of that. So doesn't need to be too loud, this section, but it does need to be, I think, nicely sustained, and also lots of natural breaths. Take breaths wherever you can in this, particularly obviously when we've got multiple voices per part. Anything else to add to that one? So this is the last page, 113.
Very long vowels maybe to sing right through the notes so we don't shorten the words by putting the consonants too early at the end. So the Lord hath laid on him rather.
So in some cases I would suggest if you're a singer that needs to take more breaths, maybe this is a place where, working with the singers around you, maybe you don't add consonants to the ends of words if you're taking a bigger breath. If people are placing consonants and not going through, make sure that you don't close off the word before a breath, so we don't lose that sustained nature. Can I just have the basses and the tenors, please? This is from G on page 113 in the novella. 1.
And the Lord hath laid on
Lovely. And I hope you could hear there how Jonathan, Lord hath laid on him. He sang down to that B flat, and there was lots of warmth, but then he took out that warmth on the B flat there, and very straight tone for Jeremy to come in. And again, we've got that clash of a C against the B flat on that. So he prepared this very straight fundamental note for Jeremy to be able to place the C on the top there.
I also had to take a breath at that point. 'Cause it's quite a long phrase to do in one breath.
Yeah.
And it might be worth having a little pact with your neighbour in the choir, which says, I will always snatch a breath at the end of the bar if you always snatch a breath at the beginning of the bar.
Yeah.
Then that way you're not breathing at the same time, maybe.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I maybe haven't said this in the Messiah workshops, but I've said it somewhere, and I'll probably say it again. Please, 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 part of your practice process when you're preparing this or any work for a performance is to practice your staggered breathing. You need to agree with your singers around you. This is where I'm going to breathe, they're going to breathe there, and that does not change. You practice that, you get used to breathing in that place, and then don't change it in the performance. This is as important as placing consonants and rhythms and all the rest, that we make sure that our breathing remains the same in performance as it does in rehearsals. Can I do the same thing, please, with the sopranos and the altos? So this is from bar 77.
And the Lord hath laid on, and the Lord hath laid on him.
And so on. I'm not sure if it was in the last Messiah. I think, did we talk about long notes and giving them direction? We did, didn't we? It was in the last Messiah rehearsal. And hopefully you can also hear that one of the ways that, I'm going to pick out Emma in this case, is using her vibrato to give a sustained note direction. It's another way, sort of starting that straight note and then warming it with some vibrato and then going back to a straight. It's slightly different than just having a crescendo. You could do that without vibrato, or but that's another way in which we can give direction to a note. Everybody, please, from G.
And the Lord hath laid on
Super. Just glorious music. Okay. He trusted in God. Someone wants more time on this piece. Sorry, I don't know how long ago I got that text, so I'm not sure which movement it was. But these are sorts of things you could be, let us know on the Facebook page which bits you have find particularly problematic, and I can then try and address those in future workshops. We can sort of look at requests for particularly problematic bits. He trusted in God. Can I have a G and a C? Free and...
He trusted in God that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him if he delight in him.
He trusted in God that he
Let him deliver him if he
let him
delight in him. If he delight in him. If he delight in him.
let him deliver if he delight in him. If he delight in
He trusted in God. God he trusted in God, he trusted in God, let him deliver him. If he delight in him, if he delight in him.
Trusted in God, let him deliver him. If he delight in him, if he delight in him,
Deliver him,
let him deliver him.
let him deliver him.
He trusted in God, let him
Let him deliver him.
deliver him. Let him deliver him. Delight in him, let him deliver him. He trusted in God, let him deliver him. If he
Let him deliver him.
Very nice. Okay. I think we've had so much good information coming out in the various movements tonight. I'm not going to get into that one in any detail tonight. We'll start with that one next week because we've only got about 10 minutes left. I would like you to sing a bit more. So let's go back to his yoke is easy and see how much of this we can sing through in the last 10 minutes. This is page 86, number 21. Let's think about rhythm and energy rather than volume. Yes, I think all of these movements tonight, let's just think about rhythm and energy, not volume. Can I have the first two notes?
His yoke is easy, his burden is light. His burden is light.
His yoke is easy. His burden is light. His burden is light.
His burden is light.
Is light. His burden is light.
His burden is light.
His burden is light.
Yoke is easy.
His burden is light. His burden.
His burden is light.
Yoke is easy. His burden is light. His burden
His light. His yoke is easy.
His burden is light.
His burden is light.
His burden
His burden is light. His burden is light. His yoke is easy. His burden is light. Is light.
is light. Is light.
His burden is light.
His burden
Is light. His burden is light. His yoke is easy. His burden is light. His yoke is easy. His burden is light. His yoke is easy. And his burden is light.
Thank you. I could hear you skipping all over the country. Couldn't do it at that speed if you didn't sing it light. Going on. Behold the Lamb of God.
taketh away the sin of the world, the sin of the world. Behold the Lamb of God, the Lamb of God,
that
that taketh away the sin of the world, the sin of the world. That taketh away the sin of the world, the sin of the world, the sin of the world, that taketh away the sin of the world.
Lovely. Number 24. Surely, surely, he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Surely, surely, he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised and he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was stripes we are healed. And with his stripes we are healed. And with his stripes we are healed. And with his stripes we are healed.
and with his stripes we are sheep have gone astray. All we like sheep, all we like sheep have gone astray.
We have turned,
everyone to his own way. All we like sheep have gone astray.
have gone astray.
We have turned everyone to his own way. We have turned
everyone to his own way.
We have turned,
We have turned
everyone to his own way.
everyone to his own way. All we like sheep
Have gone astray, have gone astray.
have gone astray.
have gone astray.
We have turned.
We have turned. We have turned.
We have turned,
We have turned everyone to his own way.
We have turned.
We have turned everyone to his own way.
We have turned.
Everyone to his own way. All we like sheep. All we like sheep
Have gone
have gone astray. We have turned. We have turned.
We have turned.
we have turned,
We have turned.
we have turned
Everyone to his own way. We have turned. We have turned.
we have turned,
We have turned.
We have turned. Everyone to his own way.
We have turned.
we have turned
We have turned everyone to his own way. We have turned everyone to his own way. And the Lord hath laid
And the Lord
Thank you very much. Big thank you to my colleagues here and their absolutely stunning singing. Very inspiring. Peter, thank you for your virtuosic accompanying, as always. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's workshop as much as we've enjoyed it. Just a reminder, there's lots of information below, including how to join our Facebook group, where to buy tickets for our performance on December the 11th. And, well, stay safe, stay singing, and we'll see you at the next workshop.